to start with some introductions. We'll dive into our conversation and then, of course, leave some time for questions. You want to start us off, Mariah?
Yeah, I'm Mariah Lynch. I'm a senior strategist at the Media Kitchen in New York. I'm currently working on a lot of very highly targeted B2B campaigns. Just to give you a little bit of background of where I'm coming from.
And my name is Natalie Silvani. I work at Quigley Simpson, the largest female-owned full-service agency in the US. And I'm the Director of Digital Media and Innovation. And I just recently adopted 2 young cats. So if you have any advice on how to stop them meowing at 5 a.m., please let me know.
Don't get cats. That's all I got. Clayton McLaughlin. I'm SVP of Excelis Performance Marketing, which you probably have maybe not heard of. It's the performance arm of Havas, which hopefully you've heard of.
Great, and I hear you have some exciting news to share in terms of the voice search space that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so luckily I'm the, I don't want to say voice expert of the group. I'm the voice guy for now, at least. Within Havas and within Excelis, we've had a lot of conversations with our clients over the last 6 to 12 months regarding voice, and so we're trying to understand what these assistants look like. So not just the smart speaker world of Google Home and Alexa and those sort of things, but assistants as a whole. And we're sort of officially unveiling today what we call Veil. So see what I did there with the veil and veil. But it's our Voice Assistant Insights Lab, which is essentially our way of tracking the marketplace and understanding what's going on in voice right now. So it's not a super novel concept, but I think the way that we're doing it is a little bit differently. We've got about 15 different devices that go across 3 different ecosystems right now. We're trying to get a couple more, or 4 systems right now. We're trying to get a couple more now. Sounds like Facebook's coming in the market officially with Aloha or whatever they're calling it. So we'll keep adding those devices. But the goal is we literally use our search teams to understand on an individual industry by industry level what's sort of trending, what's popping. We then use some form of AI to turn those search terms into questions or statements that you would generally speak to a device. And we run about 10,000 of those a week through this system. And we've been tracking it over the last 6 months in varying degrees to look at not only what the results are and where our brands and clients are actually appearing or not appearing and where the opportunities are for optimization, but also how this has changed over time. And even just in 6 months, it's interesting how you can see the way that these devices are, or these assistants are providing different results based on what's going on in the market, what people are searching for. And oddly enough, I think one of the coolest things that we've found is that we can actually control, based on our search volume or our statement volume, what the results are. So as an example, we have some really strange stuff that's just, it's in there just to test the systems. Like one of the questions is around how do you burn sage? Don't ask me, I have no idea why. But when we first started asking Alexa, it was as confused as we were about the whole thing. Like, why the hell are you asking me to burn sage? Like, I don't even know what that means. So it literally said, I have no idea. But over about a 3-week period when we asked it every single week, we started getting the request of, we don't know, but we're gonna look into it. So it seems like, okay, well, there's been enough of this query volume for whatever reason that all of a sudden this might be something that we look into. And then 2 weeks ago when we finally did it, which would have been about week 9, I think, it finally gave us results. So it's interesting, I think, is it's either learning from us or we're a large group of people that are looking how to burn sage, apparently. So, but I mean, I think you think of what these assistants are designed to do, and they're designed to learn, and they're designed to get smarter and better and provide you more relevant results. So we're sort of excited to be able to put that out in the market. We're going to release some of the research that we have from this as we continue to work through the data. And we're working with our partners at IBM and Watson so that we can talk about AI, make it sound really cool. But in all reality, we're using that system to be able to help us categorize 10,000 queries and questions and responses every single week. So we're excited about what the future of that holds for us. But it's interesting because right now it's monitoring the system, the marketplaces, and understanding how we might be able to do some organic optimization because there's really not advertising opportunities. I know we'll talk quite a bit about what does not exist and hopefully what will exist in the likely very near future.
So I guess for Natalie and Mariah, how are you guys staying on top of what's happening in the space, and how are you preparing your clients for what's coming?
Well, at the Media Kitchen, I don't think we're asking the question on how to burn sage necessarily, but
I got the answer.
you know more than me. We do have a dedicated digital engineering director, Jonathan Kim, that spends 30% of his time going out and researching startups and meeting with startups. And he heads up a digital engineering committee at our agency that focuses on creating POVs on all of these startup companies and these new people in the ad tech space, because our industry is always changing. We want to stay on top of it. It's incredibly important to our clients to stay on top of all of the new technology in the space, and to have someone that's dedicated to doing that, that can write POVs for all of the different client teams, is really, really helpful. So if they find someone that might work, they write a POV on it, any one of our client teams can raise their hand and run a test with these startup companies. And it's been great and really successful, because we can really cater, because they are startups, we can cater our campaigns and the way that the technology is working based off of what a specific client will need. So we love it. We love Jonathan. So it's been great for us so far.
Awesome. Natalie?
Well, we don't have a nifty secret weapon tool in-house. We do partner very closely with our tech vendors, and the Trade Desk in particular has been an incredible partner to us. And we love to push their buttons, and we're often the bees in their bonnets. But all of this results in them creating new innovations and incorporating our feedback into product releases, some of which you may have heard of lately. Their pre-optimization tool, which is essentially lookalike modeling, but before the campaign even starts, as well as bid clearance models and some more advanced machine learning optimizations than they've had in the past. So we're certainly in their ear regarding voice search data. How we really see this being useful is to be respectful of the user experience, so that we're not creeping anyone out when they're asking questions in their bathroom. But we're using that data for search retargeting, so that we can reach them in a time and place where they're more comfortable, and so the ads are have more creative variety, so that it's not just sound is how we're reaching them, but also with video, social, native, in other ways, because we know they're interested, but we're not encroaching on their privacy. So it's something that's definitely in infancy, but within the next 2 years, we should see a lot of strides in the programmatic space with using this kind of data.
Yeah, I think one of our big questions at our agency in terms of voice search is really the measure of intent when someone is actually searching and doing a query. And then it's also, you know, what does advertising actually look like? Like, are we going to serve an audio ad when someone searches, like, what's the best restaurant in Brooklyn? Probably not, but the fact that we're collecting data on users and maybe if we can have the ability to merge that with behavioral data, that's incredibly helpful to us. But again, we are like walking the line of privacy concerns and people being creeped out, I think in the same way. And it's something that we have to be on top of, because I don't know if I necessarily would want to know that my phone is listening to me and I get an Instagram ad because of it, but
it is.
yeah, it is. But you know, we'll see what happens. It's really exciting, and I think that there is a huge opportunity in voice search, but we'll have to wait and see, I guess.
Yeah, and one final remark on that is that by 2020, it's expected that half of all searches will be voice searches, and the relationship that people have with their voice assistant tool is that of a friend, like you're asking a friend or an assistant. So we want to be mindful of that relationship.
Well, I think that the important part as we talk about voice in particular is that it becomes completely device agnostic, right? Like, mobile changed the world because it was a device that sat in your pocket, went everywhere with you, and all of a sudden it was the most personal device in the world. This voice thing lives in the ether, and it's going to follow us around no matter where you're at, right? You can talk to a speaker, you can talk to your phone, it's going to be in your car, it's going to be in your refrigerator, it's going to be on your TV, and they're all going to talk to each other, right? So what that means as far as privacy is going to be interesting. What that means as far as our capability to collect data and be smarter about that. We just, in the way that we naturally do, we're making advertising more complicated. And theoretically, you should work better. I mean, if you look at the sheet Nordstrom just showed, right, when you got 72 columns and 52 rows, and it's beautiful and colorful. But how in the hell does that all work together? Add 1,000 more data points every minute that are telling us where you're at, what you're eating, what you're listening to, what you're watching, all of those pieces. Who's going to own all that is interesting, because Amazon, Google, Facebook, Apple are going to own that stuff.
Right.
So that's going to be more interesting as well. But so you've got all of this ubiquitous data and opportunity to engage with this ether thing that lives there that makes your life a whole lot better. But we've got to be very careful, as obviously that's already been said. But I laughed, like 2 years ago, we were at a Search Insider Summit, and I drove some people crazy because I was like, don't worry about being creepy, just be creepy, and people get used to it. And everybody's like, what the hell are you talking about? And I was like, it's going to happen. They're either going to block you, right? Fine, cool, they're going to do it anyway, or be more relevant, right? So I think there's a creepiness factor, like, hey, I'm listening to you, but relevance, right? I mean, the Nordstrom example is another great one. Like, if you can be relevant, cool. It's okay to be creepy as long as you're relevant.
Yeah, let's move into the programmatic audio space. Natalie, I know you have some experience here. Can you share with us sort of how you're working that into your campaigns?
Absolutely. So Quigley Simpson was actually the first agency to run programmatic audio through the trade desk. And of course, with the rewards comes some challenges. So one of which was extensive preparation and testing, and also the risk of performance being lower than going direct. So fortunately, our client for that particular campaign, Sutter Health, is a highly innovative, cutting-edge health client, and they were more than willing to take the minor risk for the rewards. And the rewards were that we were able to get more targeted than ever with Spotify ads. We're able to break down on a much tighter zip code level with dynamic messaging that drove people to Sutter Health facilities nearby. And we layered this on with mobile dynamic ads as well that also tied into the location of billboards and the facilities. So it created a highly targeted experience for users, and we saw a tremendous lift for new patient signups that year. So it really paid off. And since then, the space has just really taken off. I mean, just recently, earlier this month, Pandora is now available through the trade desk. And I think it's also important to be mindful of what you're running programmatically through audio and what you're not. Because while we've talked about how important it is to be programmatic for data collection and using those insights, sometimes the programs that you get going direct to the partner are special and go above and beyond. So if you're thinking of doing something really big, like a concert with Pandora or a custom playlist, programmatic can help amplify that, but be careful not to get trapped in the box of programmatic when you're thinking big.
I think for us, up to this point, it's been, I work on really highly targeted B2B campaigns, and measurement is a huge thing, so a huge thing to us. The inability to measure and mirror mobile IDs to cookie IDs has been a challenge. It is getting better, obviously, in the space, but that's still a huge concern. The other concern for at least the brand that I work on is obviously legal concerns. We are really excited about the prospect of being able to target podcasts programmatically, just because the type of content that we want to push out are available via the podcasts. The issue that we've had in the past is if a host is reading a spot, that spot has to live forever, where we have to take that down normally after a year. And just the ability to target and measure and make sure that someone has listened to that spot is a huge thing for us. The fact that we can do that programmatically and that we're going to be able to do that programmatically is really exciting, but again, it comes down to measurement for us. It's has someone listened to the ad, and can we actually attribute a conversion to someone, or even just the activity that a user takes after hearing audio on their device.
Great. Clayton, are you guys using programmatic for your audio campaigns at this point yet, or are you still kind of working to incorporate that on the audio side?
We're doing some of it, yeah. I mean, between Spotify and some of the options there. Frankly, I'm not super involved in that, so I'm probably not the right person to ask on that one. No, I mean, I know we're doing that, and I've worked on a couple of brands that are trying to figure that out. I think the podcasting thing is really interesting, because to the point of, it feels like that old radio model where you can do the live, you know, we've all listened to podcasts and people talk, you know, you've got the embedded sort of, you know, content that comes and lives with that. So I'm really interested to learn how you can do that from a podcast standpoint without, pissing off the content creators, right? If you're splitting up their content, you know, is that done in an individual app? Is that done across an entire sort of ecosystem? Is that done with individual podcasters? Like, figuring that piece out will be really interesting too.
And one more thing to note about programmatic audio is that it's part of flattening the funnel for things that we've seen traditionally as being upper funnel, such as audio, where you think, oh, you're just a loudspeaker, you're just blasting the message out. But with programmatic and all the pixeling that we're able to do, we're seeing audio move down to the funnel, to the middle space, where people are using it not just to be passive, but to learn more about a product. Maybe they're not ready to convert just yet, but getting them into that consideration phase is largely important, and we've seen audio be very successful in that part of the funnel.
Great, thanks. Let's change gears here again, and we can move into programmatic out of home. I know there are definitely some roadblocks in that space. You know, when you're moving into programmatic, you're sort of switching that pricing model from a spot buy to translating that into impressions, and there are some issues surrounding transparency or inventory and what the packages might include. But as we saw yesterday with what Cicerone is doing and connecting the dots for out of home and pushing to get inventory availability where maybe there wasn't inventory available programmatically before, like with the digital jukeboxes. So I feel like that's very exciting. What are you guys finding exciting in the space?
Well, for me, again, it comes down to measurement. So that was not really an option for us for any of our campaigns. However, I recently just read about a company called Mira that does a similar thing to what we were talking about yesterday, where a programmatic out-of-home ad can serve, and they collect the mobile IDs or the device IDs around that billboard. Or whatever whatever out-of-home ad that might be. And that's exciting because that's a way for us to close that gap in data. Again, at least for my campaigns and my clients, privacy will be a factor when it comes to actually implementing it. But it's exciting that there are ways for us to actually bring in measurement and to be able to track the effectiveness of a campaign where we previously had not been able to do that with out-of-home. So I love the fact that that's coming, and I can't wait to see how that evolves and what that will mean for our clients. But I'm excited to see that there are people like merging and thinking about these things.
Yep.
And also, I think Spotify really takes the cake for using consumer data in their out-of-home billboards. I mean, over the past 2 years, their global campaign using consumer data to make humorous and cheeky ads for out-of-home has been really amazing when they're really speaking to the consumers one-on-one, but just letting consumers know that there's a bright and optimistic future based on their listening habits. So if you haven't seen that campaign, really highly encourage you to check it out. Also, Captivate is really paving the way with dynamic out-of-home. So, I mean, I'm sure you've all seen their elevator ads. Those are now available through the Trade Desk. And it's pretty amazing because they can pull in dynamic features such as weather, pollen count, macro factors, exchange rate, things like that, and customize those ads in real time. And they're also able to target based on your first-party audiences, so they can just ingest your first-party data and then run it through Trade Desk and match up best where your consumers are, which is also great for B2B. So in my elevator at work, we take up 2 floors of the space, so we often see marketing-related materials and some of your ads in the elevator. So that's a really awesome new way to reach people, and it's made out-of-home more exciting for people like me with a digital background. So that's really, really neat. And with the dynamic thing, I think we're gonna see that more and more, where you see larger billboards outside that are digital, that are responsive based on things that are happening, like maybe it's snowing, maybe the home team has just won. So things that can be incorporated into the creative, since the creative can be switched out like that on the back end.
I'll quickly be the search nerd on this thing too. Mariah, as you talked about data, interestingly enough, we've done some studies looking at search intent data at a geo level, at a very, very geo level. Combine that with out-of-home exposure data that we have to be able to see if there's lift in the search data, and we do see that. So I think as you start buying programmatic, it's one thing to buy static out-of-home and know where that location is and to be able to study that very specifically, but when you're buying it programmatically, dynamically, in theoretically a million different places, combine that with, it's just like what you do with TV and search, where we see when we show TV ads, the search volumes go up for 16, 18 minutes, goes back down, so you buy against that. If we're gonna be able to start doing that for the elevators, for out-of-home billboards, for anything else that you consider in that space too.
Great. I know there's also opportunity within the connected TV space. Are you guys currently pulling that into your DSPs at this point? Or are you still buying direct at this time?
Well, we're doing both as we explore the space and we test out different opportunities with scale. However, we're seeing really great success running connected TV programmatically. As I mentioned, we work with the Trade Desk, but we're also looking at the inventory sources behind that, such as SpotX, Talaria, FreeWheel, Rollmob. Sorry if I left out anyone. So when we work with those partners directly, we're able to make custom buys for connected TV. So for example, this past summer for our client, Chase United, we bought out World Cup on connected TV, and it was such a cost-efficient way to reach our audience, many of whom are not even connected to traditional TV anymore. And it was a great way to reach a multicultural audience, a great way to reach the sports enthusiasts who we know to be highly interested in this credit card. So it was a great way to amplify, and we also saw that when we had the connected TV in place, that we saw a boost in our acquisition performance. And what was interesting to see is that because the Trade Desk is able to match the IDs, to see the lift in acquisitions and retargeting and prospecting when connected TV was on, to see the full funnel view. So it's been really amazing to capitalize on the benefits of programmatic connected TV this past year. I mean, just a year ago, we weren't able to buy Hulu through programmatic trading platforms. Now we are, so that's a huge game changer. So there's a lot. One more thing is dynamic. I keep bringing it up. Brightline, if you've worked with them, pretty amazing. They're able to pull in dynamic factors and galleries so that people start clicking within the connected TV space, because right now people aren't really used to clicking around into those type of TV ads. It's similar to a TV experience, but now people are learning that, oh, if they use their remotes or joystick, whatever they're using, they can actually explore more content. They could play a game. They could do pretty much anything except go off-site to another site.
Yeah, they can buy movie tickets.
Exactly,
all that now.
exactly. So that's been a really amazing progression within the past couple of years.
Yeah, at least for other clients at the Media Kitchen, we're focused a little bit more on addressable TV. So it has to do the fact that we're able to attribute, based off of like the path to conversion and all of that. It's really exciting. I can't speak too much to it just because our small B2B target isn't necessarily, TV spots are not necessarily a priority for us, but it's exciting that we actually now can fit them into our fractional attribution model. So we're running tests in 2019, so I'll be able to speak to it a little bit more in a couple months.
But definitely exciting that you're kind of moving into that programmatic everywhere capability to offer that to your clients and create efficiencies for your plans.
Well, I think what we're defining as connected TV is going to change too. Right? I know the Dish Media sales guys are in here. Are they? Did I just call them out? They're not in here. That's amazing. Well done on my part. Good job. But if you think about set-top boxes and just what's considered linear TV still, now there's companies where they've got a chip inside or some SDK or something, and they'll recognize the content.
Yep.
Move that content over, run a banner next to it. You can click on that, engage. You can buy. You can get coupons, all that kind of stuff. So what would traditionally be linear TV now becomes a connected TV experience because everything's plugged into the internet at this point. So what we're defining, I think that the Hulus of the world and the Netflixes and those sort of things, while they changed the marketplace, I think they actually drove a lot of innovation for traditional linear TV as well. And that's not necessarily connected to big buys with ABC and those kind of guys, right? It's getting more clever, which I think is really cool too.
Yeah. So I know GDPR has obviously been a huge topic for us lately. We're in a GDPR world now. How can we be more mindful about how we're using data in this space?
So I think a lot of us work with clients where we have to be mindful of the data in the first place, such as COPPA compliancy or HIPAA compliancy or FLA compliancy. So I think a lot of our clients have fortunately held us accountable to be legally squeaky clean. So that's good. But I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of improvements thanks to blockchain, just providing transparency, decentralization, and less opportunity for fraud, and also more consumer privacy. Consumers are taking control over their data when they're opting to consent or not. But there's also companies that are starting to give consumers even more control of their data, like Kili. So consumers can actually sign up and they can collect the payments on their data. So I'm sure a lot of people in this room won't like to hear that. But consumers will start getting paid for their own data. So I think there's a lot to come in terms of consumer privacy. But a lot of agencies and brands already had measures in place before all this came down in order to be mindful and not collect a certain type of PII data. So I think a lot of us are actually not sweating it too much.
For us, I agree, like our clients are very much on top of the way that they use their data and the way that we're allowed to use their data. It's obviously a huge concern. We won't work with companies that aren't GDPR compliant right now, even though we are only targeting people in the US, just because obviously things are about to change here as well.
Yeah.
I mean, look what state we're in. We just have to be transparent. The partners that we work with has to be transparent, and everybody has to understand, what we're actually doing. A lot of things can get lost. There's a huge process for us to get even like a pixel on our client site. I tell people it can take anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to get a pixel on our site. So it is a slow process, but it's obviously incredibly important with the way the world is changing. We'll see what happens. Like our clients haven't necessarily, put up our like a box on their website yet.
Mm-hmm.
That tells our customers like how we're using their data, but we won't use their data if it's not compliant.
Great. And then I guess how does that play into the user experience across these different channels we've been talking about? As we're creating that for the customers, when things start getting monetized or, we're moving into a place where we can do this on a regular basis for all of our clients.
Okay, so here's the thing about PII, right? I don't care about your personal information.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want it. I don't give a shit what your name is. I don't care. I want to know what you've done, that predicts what you're going to do in the future. That's all I
Right.
care about, right? And if you ask any like normal consumer that doesn't sit in this industry, they probably don't even know what GDPR is. The only thing they know about privacy is a tweet from Trump, right? Like they don't get what we're really doing. And when you tell them, like I have this conversation all the time with people, and it's, oh, you're in marketing, so you're like stealing my information. No, I don't care. Listen, this is what I do. I want to know what you want to buy, and I want to give you an ad that says, here's your option to buy. Like, people love when Amazon follows them around with their shopping list. They love that for some reason, but they hate it when Nordstrom does it, or when, that's probably not true. They probably love Nordstrom when it does it. But, like, I don't know, like, name your shitty brand that follows you around all the time. So it just becomes, like, I just don't, as far as, like, how brands and platforms need to use this data, yes, we need to opt in and we need to do that. I totally agree with that and have been vocal on that for years. But at the same time, like once they do that, let's stop talking about PII, because nobody in the marketing world, unless you're trying to collect maybe some purchase data, nobody uses that, right? And if you do, like raise your hand and tell me I'm wrong, because I've never used it. I don't give a shit what your name is. I don't even care what your address
Right.
is, right? If your phone sits next to you all night long while you're sleeping, I already know where you live anyway. So I don't care what your address is. And I'd probably prefer to know that phone sits right there versus what your actual address is anyway. So I think as we talk about how these platforms need to use data and be conscious of how we put that in place, like I think you already said it, like we're probably all in pretty good shape anyway. It's just, we need to have the conversation and make sure people are okay with us using the data that we're collecting. If we pay them for it directly, cool, right? I'd rather pay them than pay some giant data aggregator whose data's 3 years old anyway.
Right.
So just to challenge you a little bit on that, in terms of not caring, I mean, we work in advertising. We know the type of things that we're doing. We know that, like, I'm not collecting what John Smith is doing at 5, Sleepy Hollow or whatever. But I can't even tell you the amount of conversations that I've had with like an aunt or uncle that have been like, why is it that I'm getting targeted by an advertisement after I put something in my cart and leave? Like that, like remarketing is like really concerning to them. So in terms of our client's perspective and like privacy and data and everything, like I feel like I'm a little obsessed about it, just because we want to avoid a headline like nothing else. Like we do not want to be in the news for having anything to do with messing around with someone's data. It's a huge, huge issue. So we do have to be like, we have to care, like at least from our perspective. And we have to understand what we're actually doing with the data, and our clients and our customers have to understand what we're doing with it, because while as marketers, we might not care and we know that we're not using it in any wrong way, like just the perception of us misusing the data is a huge issue.
Sure.
So
But don't get me, and I don't want to misconstrue that I don't care about how we're using the data or how we're collecting it, or that the consumers don't know what we're doing with it, right? I think the way that we've done the opt-out is bullshit, right? Like everybody hates, it's the same reason we all get direct mail pieces 1,000 times a day, is because we didn't know how to opt out of it, right? It's just like, I'm getting blown up on my phone all of a sudden too. Like telemarketers are a thing now again, even though I thought like we're supposed to be blocked from that.
Yeah.
So the opt-out I think is bullshit. The opt-in and making sure that they understand what we're doing. But I think the remarketing, the shopping is a really interesting example, because what does that consumer own? If you put something in the shopping cart, do you own that data? Or does the shopping cart, the company that owns the shopping cart, own that data? Because you haven't made a purchase yet, right? So it's a fine line, and we need to be very careful. And one, the same, but like I don't want to make headlines about data. Like there's enough headlines about data. But for me, it comes back to what I don't care about as a marketer is your PII, right? As defined as PII,
Right.
your shopping behavior I care about, but your name, address, social security number, I wouldn't know what to do with your social security number if I had it anyway, right?
I
So-
think even outside of the data, there are brands who are trying to get into the space, and as they're figuring out what's acceptable to the consumer, there have been some missteps, and whether they're taking control of the connected device through a TV commercial, it's kind of helping us figure out how we need to move into that space. on the voice search side, because it is so different and they maybe won't be now used to getting ads in response to what they're asking their Alexa or their Google Home. So kind of tailoring that experience to a way that doesn't feel invasive and builds trust as a brand is going to be key as this starts to get monetized. And
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to be based on how we start to interact with the voice devices. Like you already have the Echo Show, you have the Lenovo or Samsung, I think that goes with Google Assistant now. You're going to be able to talk to your TV in 5 months and have everything you want on there. So that's where that monetization is going to come from. I think to have an ad experience that you talk back and forth with an ad feels awkward and cumbersome. I'm sure we're going to try it. Somebody's going to come up with it. And maybe we'll find a great way to do it. If somebody smarter than me that can do it, which won't take much, that's cool. But a lot of that is going to depend purely on the devices and how we start to send that data and those questions and the information that comes back to the devices.
Guys,
that you
I
already
want
love.
to leave us some time for us to have some questions.
Hi, my name is Alex Jurgen. I'm from Data Wallet. Natalie, a question. Could you expand more on how you think blockchain is going to play into the future of consumer data and advertising?
Yeah, sure thing. So there are some programmatic offerings that are emerging that are based on blockchain, one of which is Lucidity. So they're working to create a completely transparent and secure system where there's 100% match. There's also complete consumer privacy because everything is in cryptograph. And so I think it'll take a while for that to scale and to catch on. So I think we are really early on, so I think we're not going to see a lot of that for the next 2 to 3 years. But in terms of consumers, like I mentioned, if they're able to opt in and take back their data usage, then they'll be able to control the monetization and how much data they share. So for example, when they opt into this blockchain called Kili, they can select what kind of data they want to share, whether that's based on their website behaviors, where they're going, what they're reading, what they're doing online, or also based on surveys and polls. So they can also see what brands are buying their data and for how much. So it's very interesting how the tables will turn. If this thing picks up and starts scaling, they'll start seeing PayPal and Amazon gift certificates pop up every month. So that's definitely a revolution.
I want to have time to squeeze in another one.
Thanks. Denise and Davina from Ultimate Data. Clayton, I respect your idea around wanting to be managing PII because you don't want to have that information because of the sensitivity, the risk to privacy, et cetera. But one of the things that is very difficult when you don't have PII is the ability to enrich that data. Because in order to look at offline data, you know, that a company like Acxiom or Experian or Epsilon might have, you need to have that link. And so if you're missing out on either an email address, collecting that, of course, that's second to name and postal address, then you're not going to be able to do that kind of data enrichment. And it's going to limit your ability to do creative versioning and all of that. I mean, are your clients thinking about that at all? And is that something they're willing to trade off?
Yeah, well, I think when you talk about email addresses in particular, right, there's 2 ways to do that, right? You get the opt-in, you get the sign-up, and you own that. And I think from there, that's your consent that you want and that you need, right? And the email address is like the one thing that can connect the entire world, right? You can connect TV and, well, I mean, so many of your accounts are all, I mean, I think of every account that I have that stems everything from my purchase behavior to the TV that I own to every app that I have on my phone. It's one email address, right? So you can make a lot of connections with that, to put it that way. And I think generally that's consented and brought in, you know, by a consumer providing that on their own. Now, we've all been in, I'm not going to, some of us have been in the situation before we've bought those sort of email addresses from some of the guys that you talked about, right? How they got that isn't always understood. And I think, you know, and again, I'm just as guilty as this. For years, we've used that data and we knew it was probably a little shady, but you know what? It was available and nobody seemed to make a skunk about it. So it's kind of like, you can cheat a little bit on the football field, and you only, when they throw the flags, the only time it matters, right? And we just got the flag thrown on us as an industry over the last 12 months.
Right, so I'm not thinking about appending an email address from a third party. I'm thinking about using an email address or using the postal address as a matching criteria back so that you can take advantage of all of that data that is traditionally called offline data
Sure.
to enrich that profile. So I just wanted to bring that up as
Yeah,
it's
no,
a
I get it.
caution that you have to balance the
Totally. And I
right?
think it's just it's an understanding of how much of that enriched data is useful. It's to your point, it's a balance. And every brand's going to be different. Every piece of information is going to be a little bit different to every single brand. And so I think you have to be, from my perspective, I would rather find a different solution to that as opposed to having to use some level of PII. Now again, understanding that email address, from my perspective, is that one piece that can tie everything together. My hope is that people aren't just tossing their email addresses around, or we're not just buying email addresses from gigantic, the spam email
Right.
companies anymore, or whatever that becomes. So.
And
Thanks.
we're going to have to continue this conversation in the roundtable that Clayton's going to be leading. So thanks, Shannon, panel, thanks very much for getting us off to a great start.
Thank you.
Hashtag be creepy.
We'll